right, welcome back to Happy Hour with Heather and Guest. This is episode number 122. I'm that other dude, Andrew, and as always, I'm joined by Heather.
Hello.
And today we're going to talk about a special band to me called Black Pyramid from Northampton, Massachusetts. So before I get into my spiel, Heather, I thought I could hand you the reins and you could begin this journey.
Yeah, okay. Oh, well, first of all, first order of business is I want to wish you a happy birthday.
Oh, why, thank you so much.
I listened to their latest release, The Paths of Time Are Vast, and I love the name of that. That is just such a cool name for an album. This is their first new full-length album since 2013. This is a monster of an album and well worth the wait. It was not, I certainly was not prepared for what I heard. Blown away is an understatement. It was more like being run over by a two-stack Mac. I really recommend listening to the whole album. Literally every song is excellent. I also really love how there is The Paths Are Vast, part 1, part 2, and part 3. And those 3 songs are 20 minutes. And the song that follows, to close out the album, The Quantum Phoenix, is almost 16 minutes long. So this is much more than a Doom record. It's a journey. You can put this on, get lost in it, not have to think about anything, take a vacation from your thoughts, and be present in the music. You'll be amazed at how well this makes you feel. When I walk, I usually don't listen to anything because I like hearing the birds sing, but I could definitely see value in putting this on and listening to it while walking. And actually, I think I'm going to try it. It would be like meditation, just get carried away by the music. The way the songs are both heavy and expansive is really incredible, and a lot of the guitar riffs are truly mind-blowing. I saw that they had a tour in Europe and have some shows on the East Coast, and if they come around, this would be a great show to see and go and get your face melted off.
Absolutely. I had seen that they were touring in Europe. I didn't know that they would be returning to the States anytime soon, so I'll have to keep an ear open.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is so. I was in Hong Kong in 2013, and I had started a podcast with my friend Martin called A Fistful of Faceful, where the goal was to convince Martin, who is a very meek British gentleman who listened to Britpop, that he should consider listening to heavy metal. So every episode, there was some history. We would visit different genres. And then I would end up playing him songs and he would give me his feedback. Not surprisingly, he gravitated toward hair metal, bands that were very much accessible and part of the mainstream. He also liked some early Doom, very early 70s, like early Pentagram. He liked that as well. So I would spend a lot of time for the first, this was sort of my first foray into it. I would let the YouTube algorithm send me suggestions. And one of the first bands they sent me was Black Pyramid. So Black Pyramid, I think, was the first stoner doom band that was contemporary, that was making music that I was like, oh, okay, they're still, like, I don't have to just go back to listen to Black Sabbath. There are other bands out there that are kicking my ass that are making music right now. And I think it was the track Mirror Messiah off their first album. The tone of the guitar and the riff, just like, I was like, whoa, this is This, in the words of George Costanza, this is like discovering plutonium by accident. Um, so I think I picked up the first two albums they had were called One and Two, um, and I remember I would just listen to those, and I was like, okay, sort of like how Nirvana came out when I was 13, and I felt like they that was my band. Like, this is a band that I've found. No one's told me about them. I found them. They're mine, and they're making music for me. And I felt the same way with Black Pyramid. I was like, okay, this is a doom band that plays really cool music with some progressive influences and some, space, like you had mentioned, expansive. Um, but I was like, I don't think very many people outside of the underground knows about them. So so I tried to, like, I was like, I'm gonna start with Martin and try to get them out there. And then I think, the I don't know what happened, but I know the singer guitarist Andy Barrett. I think his last name is Baretsky or Berensky. Um, Left the band. I think it was his band, and I think he left the band and was replaced. And they released the 2013 album without him. And then I think I don't know if he got the band back. Um, and the newest version of the band that just released this album have been together for like the last 10, 9 or 10 years. So yeah, I was really, for literally for the last decade, I was like, okay, they're gonna release a new album. Black Pyramid is gonna it's just a matter of time. So I'm gonna bide my time and go back and listen to their split EPs and whatnot that they'd put out, and just wait. Um, and then word comes out like, oh yeah, 2024 we're gonna release an album. I had no idea what it would be. And then the Paths of Time Are Vast gets released, and like you, I was like, wow, that's an awesome title. Um, and I remember being satisfied because the riff from the crypt on the Borderlands kind of satisfied my desire for there to be like the trademark low tone like riff that'll melt your face. And then the Paths of Time Are Vast parts 1, 2, and 3. I was like, okay, this is like a mini opera. Like, you should listen to these three together. Um, I think you're right. You should listen to the whole album together, but specifically those songs play as like Act One, Act Two, Act Three. Um, and the first Paths of Time Are Vast opens with a riff that reminded me of Sweet Dreams by the Eurythmics. It's very different, but it had that impression. And then the title of the track and the lyrics made me think of like the last 10 years and how things have changed, but there's still, and they're right, the paths of time are vast. And according to the chorus, the paths of time are vast, carved patterns to the past. This longing vision breeds reality. And with all that we've been through in the last few years, with COVID, with my aneurysm, with my mother's ALS diagnosis, um, just trying to navigate through the different iterations of this show. It's just been a really incredible journey. And I keep thinking the paths of time are vast. Like, let's let all this play out and we'll ride the wave and make it all good. And along the way, we'll listen to some really dynamite jams. But I'm really glad that they released this album. It certainly didn't disappoint. The bar was set really high with the first two albums, but this delivered everything I could have wanted. And it built, the first two albums are mostly like doom and stoner, but this had some progressive elements to it and some space elements to it and psychedelic elements to it that I really thought worked well with the music. So yeah, this was my thing that I had found that I was really proud of. That I was like, oh yeah, no one knows about this, but I've discovered it, and I'm gonna listen to it and share it and try to make it, big. This was like the first time since grunge when I was in seventh grade that I was like, oh, okay, this is something I can hold on to and get something from.
Yeah, I have to say that a lot of all the bands that you've suggested that we talk about, I have to say that this one is definitely towards the top of the list. This album is, I just think it's incredible,
Thank you.
and
Yeah,
the
go
fact
on.
that they haven't released anything in over 10 years. And then they come out with this album that just knocks your socks off. And, I definitely think that this is definitely a band that we should put towards the top of our list for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting is like I know Quantum Phoenix had been on an album that had been released, an EP that had been released previously, but I think the majority of the songs were things that they'd just been working on in the last few years. Um, I think they really have a great rapport with each other in terms of their playing. You know, so yeah, it was interesting because I had so many expectations for this album of what I'd hoped it would do. And at one point, I had to check myself because I was like, dude, pump the brakes because there's no way this album can live up to the unrealistic standards you're setting. And then it did. Like, I put it on and I was like, from the first track, I was like, okay, this is one of those times where your expectations were met.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm glad. Yeah, I will definitely. They're on my, along with like Slow Green Thing and Purple Hill Witch and a bunch of other bands that we've listened to. Black Pyramid will definitely be in the rotation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm definitely going to keep an eye on where they're playing.
Sure.
If they play outside of the East Coast, if they start moving, across the country and head on over to the Midwest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on that.
Well, I remember in 2013 looking them up because I was thinking to myself, okay, I'll be back in the States at some point, and it'd be cool to see them. And I know back then they were mostly just staying in Massachusetts. Like they would play shows at different places near where they lived. So I'm hoping now that they've done a European tour that they're going to branch out and maybe hit the Midwest, hit the West Coast.
Yeah, hopefully they're working on a US tour.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They would be a great band to go see. I really feel like um, they could headline at Reggie's now, and it would be a great show.
Yeah.
Reggie's is a spot in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where Heather has posted some really phenomenal videos on YouTube of shows she's seen at Reggie's. So it's
Yeah.
become like the place that I think of when I think like, oh yeah, what would be a great venue to go see a band at? I've never been there, but Heather makes it look pretty dynamite. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really cool place to go see shows. Yeah. They had that and the empty bottle, but it seems like Reggie's gets more of the bands like what we talk about, you
right.
know.
Well,
So
I know I saw the other day that Slomosa, one of the bands we talked about, is embarking on a U.S. tour. I think it's the first time they're coming to the U.S. They're going to support Alkaline Trio, and they're actually going to be playing in Charleston in September. So hopefully that's the sign of more bands that we've spoken of coming to the U.S. or playing in the U.S. And if you're out there, members of Black Pyramid, and you're watching this and you're debating whether or not you should tour the Midwest, hopefully this tilts it in the favor of going to play the Midwest.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
absolutely. But yeah, I'm really glad you liked it.
I did. I liked
This
it a lot.
this was one of those things where like I usually don't. No, I'm never worried because you and I feel have very similar tastes. But there are times where I'm like, I do hope she really enjoys this, because I really enjoy this, and I feel like it's worth really enjoying. And of course, that's there's never been a time where I've been like, what do you think of this band? And you're like, they're not very good. And I'm like, well, I love them.
I try to keep, I really, really, when it comes to music, I try to keep an open mind, and I try to listen to everything and give it give it a really fair listen before I develop any opinions on it. So I try to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm fortunately Black Pyramid is the real deal, so I don't
Yeah,
think you need to dive really deep. Uh,
no.
but yeah, I'm really glad Paths of Time, and I would imagine they probably have, whether or not they're working on a follow up. Um, but my guess is there were probably tracks they chose not to include. So they probably have a catalog of material if they want to release anything in the future. Um, I'm just glad they're back. I'm glad they have a new album out and they're touring, and yeah.
And I'm glad we got to talk about them on your birthday.
Oh yeah, no, it's been
Well,
a it's been a wonderful gift.
yeah, so that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
But yeah, I would go check out Black Pyramid, the latest release. I would start with the latest release, and then if you're interested, go check out. They have a pretty comprehensive catalog. Um, all good music. You can't go wrong. Um, yeah, there. I sent Heather a riff this morning. I was like, check this song out. This section. The song is called Winter Mute, and I remember walking home after I would teach. So I would teach at the City University of Hong Kong, the community college, and I would take the train home to the suburbs in the what were the territories called? Why can't I remember this? The New Territories, which was like the suburbs of Hong Kong. And I remember I would walk from the train station to my apartment, and I would just rewind this one section of the song on my iPod. I would just be like, okay, go to 5 minutes 30 seconds, listen to 6 minutes 30 seconds, and then rewind and do the whole thing over again. It was such a wonderful moment
yeah,
that I had to share it with you this morning.
yeah. And the fact that you remember doing that all these years later, that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was little to do on the walk to and to the train station and back. Um, it was the novelty of being in Hong Kong had worn off, and there were it wasn't like I was passing by restaurants or department stores. It was just apartment buildings. So I would just sort of put my earbuds in and zone out. And I just remember this was one of the jams that I used to put on. So I had the opposite. It was the opposite of you wanting to listen to the birds as you're walking outside. I was like, let me drown out the sound of car horns and people speaking
Yeah,
people speaking Cantonese that I don't understand.
yeah.
So
Because I'm out in the country, and
yes,
that's in the city. So yeah, two completely different atmospheres.
absolutely. But now, um, now it's nice. I look forward to listening to music, but also going out. I don't need to drown anything out anymore. So it's very nice.
Yeah.
But either way, I'm really glad you dug this band and this album. And I look forward to next week when it's your turn in the rotation. And
Yeah. Well, next week we're going to be speaking with the man behind Mothman and the
oh,
Thunderbirds.
that's right.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, that should be pretty interesting. I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to that.
absolutely. And that's the final day in June.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
cool. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Heather. This was enjoyable as it always is. And
Yes.
I'm glad you dug it.
Yeah, I sure did.